All right, it is a preview Friday. The Bucks come to town on Sunday. Get us all caught up from the Washington City paper. Matthew Paris, how are you? Not the City paper, the Washington Times. The Washington Times. Had Troy on Tuesday. I got, but from the Washington Times is Matthew Paris. Matthew, how are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah,
you would think that I know that. I did not go back and do great research on the subject, but I believe that you have been on the show more than anybody else.
Really?
Yeah, I think you've been on 4 or 5 times now between football and basketball.
Yeah.
I think Scott Abraham is at 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think this is my third because I remember doing one with you and Pooh and another time before that. So
okay. Your bye week. Did you enjoy it? How did you spend it?
Yeah, it was still pretty busy. I mean, just because Washington had off, but I was in Baltimore actually. I was doing I did a Kirk Cousins column and how the situation in Minnesota is very similar to the one here, and how just kind of the same questions and conversations about Cousins' career persist, even though he's long gone from this place now.
The lore of Kirk Cousins will reign forever in the minds of those that wanted him and those that just did not want him.
Right.
There was no middle ground, I don't think, for that. Matthew, there's been it dawned on me the other day, we haven't heard about the name change in a while. I'm guessing they're excited about that. For a while there, it was interesting. They were putting out like the rebrand videos, and I don't know if people got too agitated by them. I just know we haven't heard anything about it in a while. I mean, what is it? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I think it's because they're nearing the goal line. I think, they're getting ready for the unveiling of it in 2022. And, they've said that they've been designing final brands and, logos and stuff like that for the final names. There are 3 or 4 names, I think, that they've said they've considered. It's likely that they probably have the name, but they haven't, said anything, or they're narrowing it down. But, ever since, I think the last time it was really like, in the news cycle was when Tanya Snyder went on Adam Schefter's podcast.
Right.
And she said that he asked if these were the 8 names. She said yes. There was, oh no, she didn't say that. Yes, she did. There was a back and forth there that made it confusing. But ever since then, it's been kind of all quiet on that front.
You guys are still not in the locker room. I know you have more access. I'm curious. I think I have an understanding, but I think a lot of the viewers won't. And it made me think today because of this Chase Young stuff, right? Yeah. So is the Chase Young stuff a big deal? No, but I wonder if you guys not being able to get into the locker room, maybe if you're in the locker room, right, you can get a guy going or an eye roll that maybe you don't see now to be able to better judge. Tell the folks exactly what you guys miss out by not being able to get in the locker room and actually see these guys like that.
Yeah, it's been like, I love to use the locker room for getting a guy's opinion real quick on something, or, getting like bouncing around from guy to guy to say, like, let's say I'm writing a story on Chase Young. It's a lot harder to grab, say, Deron Payne for a few minutes. Like, I'd have to request him. And then if I'm requesting him now one-on-one, then I'm likely missing someone else. I think of a story I wrote in the off season that I really would have loved to use like locker room for, or just even open availability thing. But like, Kyle Allen is a big Bachelor fan.
Okay.
And so he's a fan of that reality TV show. And, I asked, hey, what do your teammates think about this? But if I had locker room access, I could just easily go up to guys, and it's not worth necessarily asking a receiver, through a formal interview request, hey, can I talk to you about Kyle Allen's television viewing habits? And then there's also stuff that, besides features, that are just helpful to know in locker room, just pulling a guy off to the side and being like, hey, what went wrong with that play? I'm not necessarily writing it, but you can get a little bit closer to the truth or the mood of the team. I think you can gauge a lot more in the locker room and having those private conversations with guys than it.
What do you think the mood is of the team right now?
Yeah, I think it's a little weird. I think they're refreshed from the bye week, but they've been frustrated. There's not Well, does it ultimately make a difference of saying we've got to fix these mistakes right now? We've got to go do this. There's urgency. I just haven't seen a lot of guys like really, pound the table saying like we've got to get these mistakes corrected. They've said they have to make the mistakes corrected, but I think of the Broncos and how they were coming into Washington, or before they faced Washington. I think Von Miller called it a must win or something like that. Like there's no really like urgency. We've got to do this compared to maybe some other teams, but I also don't, just because that's missing, I don't know how much of a big I don't really put a lot of stock in that either.
It was all Ron we trust last year, and he's made some moves so far. If we're looking at the halfway mark, you brought that up, makes me think of a guy like Ryan Kerrigan. Like, do you think a guy like that is missed on that team? Is Ryan Kerrigan tearing the league up for the Eagles? No, he's not. Do I think he'd have gotten major snaps here? No, I don't. But correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Young and Kerrigan have their lockers right next to each other? Do you think they're missing a guy like that with all that experience and maturity?
Yeah, I do think they're missing some veteran voices just to be able to do that. Like, I think Kerrigan, especially when you look at Montez Sweat's injury, you would really like a guy like Ryan Kerrigan for
Sure.
that rather than James Smith Williams or Casey Toohill or Shaka Tony, whoever plays in front of or in place of Sweat. But Smith Williams also has more sacks than Kerrigan this year, so who knows? But
Well, we'll
to
get
your
to that. I'm
yeah,
excited about Smith Williams' season.
yeah. To your overall point, though, yeah, I think they are kind of missing that veteran standout voice. I mean, I think the closest things to that are Jonathan Allen is always consistent for that. Landon Collins, I think, is close to that vocal role, but he has taken a lesser role with the team. And then Terry McLaurin and Chase Young are the two verbal leaders for offense Terry, defense Chase, but they're still young.
They brought in two Martins in the offseason. Do you have a grasp on what the front office looks like with those two guys and Ron being basically, president of football ops? I mean, he's the top of the food chain, but what are these guys doing? Who makes the decision? Like, who makes the decision on a kicker? Do we know that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, in terms of that, I don't necessarily, I think it's like a brain trust decision of, I mean, how it's been explained is that Marty Herney is, he has he's not the general manager, but he's more of the road guy. He'll go out and really likes the road. Like he was at the Pittsburgh UNC game
Yeah.
just the other night, whereas Martin Mayhew is, the one in the office hammering out the details, that sort of thing. But Martin Mayhew travels too. He's been to all the road games and that sort of thing. So, he's still pretty involved. It's a collective brain trust that reports to Ron, and Ron is really the ultimate decision maker besides, Dan Snyder, 'cause he signs off on it. But it's really, they all report to Ron and Ron has final say.
It'll be interesting to see if it works. I don't know that it's worked a lot of times this way. But I mean, we'll see. I'm willing to give him the opportunity to do it. Some of the let's get to Curtis Samuels. He's not going to play again. Are they going to shut him down? I mean, this is another one of these rumors are flying that it wasn't handled right and there's no training staff per se. First of all, Chris Baker was on and said how small these training staffs are. It blew my mind. But I mean, what's the plan with Samuels? And will you follow also Ben Juice has a concussion again?
Yeah, so we'll hit Samuel first. Samuel met with the doctors this week to get another opinion on his groin. The groin obviously has been bothering him since late May. Rivera said that, they're not shutting him down just yet, that he's still optimistic that he can play. But of course, Rivera is an optimistic person in general. He said coming out of the bye week, he hoped Samuel would return, and that hasn't been the case. So with him, I'm in a believe it when I see it stage. I've been like that for a while, but, we haven't asked Rivera about whether surgery is going to be needed for Samuel or anything like that, because we saw the way he reacted the first time. But we haven't brought that up again. Maybe it's worth asking in a few weeks if it continues. But right now I think things are really the status quo for Curtis Samuel, and that status quo is just he's not practicing, he's not playing, and they're just kind of trying to ease him into this, but that really hasn't worked. As for Benjamin St. Juice, yeah, so what happened there is it looks like he suffered another concussion in practice this week,
In
according to,
practice.
yeah, so that's what Nikki Javala, colleague at the Washington Post, she reported. Um, he started feeling symptoms on Thursday. They listed him out with an illness, but now after the symptoms worsened, they put him back into the protocol. So
Which is
yeah,
two for him, right?
that's two for him this season. So yeah, that's a little worrying because guy I think of his rookie year who had a promising rookie season and then was derailed by concussions was actually Monte Nicholson. I don't know if you remember how well
Sure.
Nicholson played his rookie year until, even outside the legal troubles that Nicholson had later on in his career, um, he was slowed down by injuries for sure.
Sheriff and Cosme appear ready to return.
Yeah.
Was there, before you answer that, was there any movement on Sheriff? Are you surprised they didn't trade him?
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, 18 million is a lot to take on to a thing, and Rivera refers to Sheriff as a franchise cornerstone, and they would like to work out a deal there. I mean, at least that's what they've said publicly. Again, I'll believe it when I see it, but I think that they weren't eager to look to get off his number or anything like that, and teams weren't, trying to. I don't think that there was anything close with that, and so yeah, he's good to go. He wasn't even on the injury report by the end of the day. He wasn't questionable. Sam Cosme is questionable with the ankle. It looks like he's going to play. I'd be surprised if he didn't, but Cosme did refer to it as day by day, and we'll have to see how he feels. But
Sounds like another week for Logan, or you think he'll be back?
yeah, another week at least. He wasn't. Rivera said today that it's the type of injury that you would want to see him practice at least a couple days in a row, but he hasn't even returned to practice technically yet because he's been on the side field. What happened too there is they worked him out on Monday. They really scaled up his workload to see if he could handle it, and he came back a little sore the next day. And so they've been trying to ease his plan, and so he hasn't taken the field. He hasn't practiced since he's still technically on injured reserve, but once he's off it, they can activate him off it, and then they'd have 21 days. But they're not even to that stage of it yet. So
Okay.
it looks like he's at least another week away. Maybe we'll see how he is next week.
The other big acquisition that's been a little nicked up, William Jackson III. At the halfway point, not what they expected, not what he expected, not what you or I expected. It feels like, and it's all over my Twitter page, that they continue to try to pound the square peg into a round hole. What does the coaching staff say about where the disconnect is on? I thought they were going to bring him in to play more man. They haven't done that.
Yeah. I mean, they've tried some man, but it's just the way that they even that when they play man, the way that they've asked him to play it is a little bit different technique wise than what he's used to in Cincinnati. They just teach things a different way, and I think he's really struggled to adapt to that type of teaching. It looks a little bit uncomfortable for him, and I think the thing with him is he's so worried about making a mistake at times than he ends up actually making mistakes. I think he's thinking too much through it. And he
Fred
said,
Smith told me one time with that defensive line that he would never line up further than 5 yards off the line of scrimmage and shove people. And it feels like we line up in the secondary 10 yards off the ball a lot. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, they liked zone there. They had success with that last year, obviously, and Rivera has always had a really zone heavy team, even dating back to Carolina, and so that's kind of his preference there. But it's not, it hasn't been a great fit so far. I think they've said that he's getting better. We'll see if this injury has allowed to given him the chance to reset. He's missed the last 2 games, so play Sunday. And so it's still coming along, but yeah, it reminds me a lot of, we made this comparison in training camp, but with Josh Norman and,
Right.
Josh Norman not having the same natural fit last, with Washington coming from Carolina. And now it seems it's kind of the opposite where Jackson is struggling to fit in.
The other one, I don't know if you've seen this, the PFF numbers are out and people are talking about it. And I know the numbers are what the numbers are. That's fine. But the numbers suggest last year, Chase Young was significantly better playing left end than he was right end. Have they given a reason why they continue to play him at right end this year?
Um, yeah, no, it's I think they have varied it. They have switched it up here and there. I mean, him going against left tackles is he struggled a lot with that at the beginning of the season with Rashawn Slater and stuff. So by switching him on the right side, to go against the right tackle, or, let's see, am I switching? Am I mixing the directions? I think I did.
Yes.
But no, I mean they just have really varied it up, and Chase Young's hasn't said they've had a preference or anything like that. I think Chase Young's bigger issue, more so than the sides, is that he just hasn't handled the extra attention as well, the double teams, chippers, and he hasn't stayed as patient as Rivera would have liked. So I don't know necessarily if it's one side or the other. I think maybe there's too much focus on that, where it's the other stuff that is kind of slowing down his production.
Let's get you put on your thinking cap and looking in the future. I got a couple things I'm curious about. Will we see Reeves get any action this year?
I think it would take an injury or two. I mean, remember they have Derek Forrest as well.
Derek Force is above him on the depth chart, right?
Yeah, so yeah, because Reeves isn't even on the active roster; he's on the practice
It's
squad.
crazy to
So
me.
it would have to take another injury or two. I mean, we haven't even seen Deshaun Everett at this point. So yeah, I think there's an uphill climb for Reeves to get anything.
Do you think they will draft a quarterback in the first round or go a Matt Ryan type guy again next year?
Well, honestly, if Matt Ryan is available, they should go after him. I mean,
I've said
Matt
that
Ryan,
repeatedly. I agree.
Matt Ryan is that was my preferred option even over Stafford last year, to be honest. Um, Matt Ryan has had a really great season as well. Always been kind of a Matt Ryan guy, but besides that, I think they'd really have to fall in love with the guy to draft someone like that high. I mean, I think they'll definitely look at their options. This isn't a great quarterback class, but I mean, just like at the Pittsburgh game, that had two top quarterbacks, Sam Howell, and I'm
Yeah,
thinking on the Pittsburgh kid's
I
name
like
right
the
now,
kid from
but
Pickett. I like Pickett, the
I
kid
think
from Pitt, a
that's
lot.
right. And so they're doing their due diligence. It's just whether it um, pans out.
Are you more surprised about the lack of production from the defensive line or more impressed by how well the offensive line has played?
Um, I would have said the offensive line, but I think the injuries in the last few weeks have kind of caught up to them. So I'll go the defensive line, but I would say I'm more surprised, just more so by Chase Young, because if you look at the interior of the defensive line has been awesome. Jonathan
Yes,
Allen has had a great season. Ron
yes.
Payne has been pretty impressive as well, and even Montez Sweat, he has 4 sacks. That's not nothing, and they've been able to generate pressure. I think the defensive line has been coming along steadily. I just think with Young, it's about time to start producing at a higher level than he is.
I know one of the great things I love talking to you about is because I know you cover both the sports. So, better chance that the Wiz get to 50 wins this year or a Washington football team winning another 5 games this year?
Well, let me think about that. So they'd have to finish 7-10. You know that I kind of think I would go with Washington, like the football team, just
I was
because
thinking about this all day. It's an
I
interesting
that's a
question.
great question. I'm gonna pose that to
Please feel
I'm gonna
free.
yeah I'm gonna ask Ben Standing that because he loves to talk to Wizards as well. Um, yeah, I think I would go with the football team only because I I just don't think the Wizards. I think the Wizards are like legitimate. I just think it's so hard to clear 50 wins, especially in the East and the way it is. Um, the last time they started out 7-3, they or 8-3 even they finished with 46 wins. So
I think, and that's why I got the papers mixed up. We had Troy on to talk basketball the other day. I
yeah,
think he said it's been 40 years
yeah, it has.
since they've won 50 games.
Yeah, so I don't think they're gonna clear that mark, but I do think they're gonna have a nice season. But yeah, I would choose the football team. You would say, all right, maybe they beat Las Vegas, they beat Carolina, even maybe not now with Cam, but and then they steal a couple NFC East games at the end to get to 7. But that I would put long odds on both. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, the over under number you could have gotten for Wizards was really like they had them
34,
low. You
yeah.
could have gotten a
That
nice
was,
number
yeah.
there. Let's wrap with this, Matthew, and I appreciate you coming on today. If they pull out a win on Sunday, how do they do it?
I just think Brady will really have to have an off day of just really looking like 44 years old. I mean, Antonio Brown's not going to play. I think Chris Godwin has to be inactive for them as well. He's questionable right now. I just think it'll take a real performance from Tampa Bay, really just crapping the bed, and generating pressure. We've seen in the past when Brady is effective, that sort of thing. And then I think Taylor Heineke, he's going to have to recreate some of that playoff magic from last year and
You
be
think
able
we'll
to
see
convert
Kyle
them.
Allen this year?
I do. Yeah, I don't think Ron Rivera wants to do it. I mean, I know Ron Rivera doesn't want to do it. He has said as much, but I just think the way that this is headed, we'll see him at some point, but I don't necessarily think it'll be this game or even next week. I just, I really like Taylor Heineke. I think would be a really nice backup in the league. I just think
Yeah.
they're starting to hit that ceiling with him to where if they really get down in the hole, all right, let's see what Kyle Allen has. But for now, I think it'll be Heineke for at least a little bit.
A quick follow up on that one. Was Patterson a one-off last or 2 weeks ago, or will we see more carries for him?
Good question. I don't know. I think we'll see a little bit more carries from him. It just depends how Gibson Shin is doing, and especially coming off the bye, did it help him get that rest? I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that one truthfully.
You want to venture a score prediction?
Not really, but I'll say, let's see, Tampa Bay 34, Washington 17.
It feels like something like that for sure.
I like the spread's 9.5, and I like Tampa Bay to cover.
Matthew Paris covers the team for the Washington Times. You got anything coming up? What are we looking out for?
Not. I mean, I do. I have a hopefully for Carolina and Washington next week. I'll have an interesting story at least. Hopefully, if everything goes right. I still need to do some reporting on it, but I'll go tease that way. So just check out my work, washingtontimes.com/sports, and you can follow me on Twitter at Matthew_Paris.
Appreciate your time today.
Hey, yeah, appreciate it. Thank you for having me.